Hello, this is Dennis with A1 Telephone Service and Repair, A1 Electronics. You can reach us on the web at www.a1-telephone.com, and you can also reach us at 618-235-6959. Today I want to show you a really cool wooden wall crank telephone. This is Don's Equipment from South Carolina. This is the initial checkout of this cool wooden wall crank telephone. And what we want to do is go over what needs to be done in our repair and conversion of this telephone. Now, we want to go through the hook switch. Now, a lot of the parts are off of the telephone. They've been removed. And then also there's a lot of parts missing. And the bell solenoids are missing, the magneto and the crank handle and some various other parts. A receiver capsule cap is missing, and we want to replace those parts and install them onto the telephone. We're also going to be installing a keypad in the battery box area so that Don can simply dial a number whenever he chooses, and that will be located in the battery box area. And we have to go through all of the parts that we do have. We're going to be replacing the transmitter with a electronic amplified transmitter that we design and build here at the shop, so there'll be plenty of transmit power. And we want to also mention that this is a Western Electric 250, so it's a 250W. In the day that this telephone was put together and put out onto the market, you may find a lot of different various parts on one of these telephones because they used what they had. And they had a lot of different telephone companies, and they were making phones and giving them to their customers. So they can have various parts. But this telephone is a cathedral top. The door does open towards the crank handle, so that's an early model when the door opens towards the crank handle. Later on, the door opened away from the crank handle because they did not want the door interfering with the crank handle. We also want to reinstall the bells on this unit when we put our solenoid on the telephone. We also want to put our magneto in and get a crank handle for the magneto. So we have a lot of work that we need to do. There's no wiring in this unit, and we need to rewire this telephone the way we want it wired to work the way we want it to work. We also want to install a modular port for the line cord, so you can simply bring in any length, any color line cord that you choose, bring it right into the telephone and plug into the modular port. Makes for a simple, easy plug and play connection. We're going to be doing some still pictures of the inside of this unit to show you what it looks like. We also want to replace the receiver inside the receiver capsule. That's going to be upgraded. We also want to install a circuit that we design and build here at the shop. It allows you to walk up to this unit, crank the magneto, ring the original bells, but not backfeed any voltage into the telephone line, and yet when you get a call, the original bells ring. So we have a lot of work that we need to do on this telephone, and we want to get a start on that work. We're going to come back and get more video as we move forward in the repair and conversion of this really cool wooden wall crank telephone. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back now, and we're in the middle of the process of repairing and converting this really cool wooden wall crank telephone, and we want to show a little bit about what's going on. Now, we're working on the transmitter and how that transmitter is mounted to the telephone, and what we do is install a plug and a socket so the transmitter can be removed for shipping purposes or if the telephone is ever worked on. And it makes for a simple, easy plug-and-play connection. And on our socket, we have a notch that stands out, and that would go towards the top of the telephone. You want to line up this little notch that's in the center of the plug to the socket, and once that's lined up, it can simply just be plugged right in, and it makes for a simple, easy plug-and-play connection. And then when removing, if you remove the transmitter, you always want to make sure that there's only so much wire underneath the transmitter bracket, so when removing it, you want to be careful that you don't pull anything apart. And then also on the plug, there's a little bit of a standoff on each side of it, and if you grab it and kind of rock it back and forth, you'll be able to unplug it. You don't ever want to grab the wires. You could pull them out of the plug. So now that that's been taken care of, we want to move on to some other things on this telephone, and a little bit of everything has been done here. We even had to polish out the bells, and then we had to darken them up a little bit because the bells had a lot of dents and they had to be removed and polished out. But we also darkened them up to match the rest of the telephone. We don't want them to stand out more than the telephone. So now we can move on to some other issues that we want to take care of. We'll come back and get some more video as we move forward in the repair and conversion of this really cool wooden wall crank telephone. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back now, and we want to talk about the shelf that this telephone would have had. And we do not have it. Don has the original shelf. He removed it when he shipped this unit to us for repair and conversion. And this telephone has a really cool rustic look to it, and it would be great to see it with a shelf on the telephone because it looks cool now, and I'm sure with a shelf it just kind of finishes it off. I like the rustic look to these old telephones because they were used, they were in service, and this is what a telephone from this period would look like by today's standards. It was in service, and it has a really cool rustic look to it, so I'm sure it's going to look great when he finishes it up and installs this unit. We're going to go ahead and take a short break. We're finished up with this unit, and we're going to be doing the final checkout, so we'll be right back. Okay, we're back now, and we are finished up with the repair and conversion of this really cool wooden wall crank telephone. We want to run through a little bit about what's going on. Now, we've had to work on everything on this telephone, and a lot of the parts were missing, and so that was all taken care of. We also took the bells, and there was some dents in them, so we removed the dents, and we had to polish the bells out, and then we had to darken them up because we don't want them to be too bright. We want them to kind of look like the rest of the phone, which is rustic, and it looks cool that way. We also installed a cloth receiver capsule cord. We upgraded the receiver. We also had to get a cap for this receiver. That was missing. We remounted everything at the side of the telephone for the receiver cord. It has outside connections. That was all redone. We also upgraded the transmitter, rewired everything in this telephone, installed a magneto. We also installed a crank handle for the magneto, and the little cosmetic ring. And we're going to show you some still pictures of that. We went through the hook switch. We installed our circuit that allows you to walk up to this telephone, crank the magneto, and ring the original bells, but not backfeed any voltage into the telephone line. And when you get a call, the original bells ring. We had to install a solenoid for the bells, and we installed a keypad, a network, and wired everything in. So everything has been gone through, and we also installed some eyelets for when you mount the telephone, and that's been taken care of. So everything has been worked on this telephone basically. The door is warped a little bit, but the telephone's 100 years old, and I think it really has a cool look. Now we want to go ahead and mention our amplified pickup. We use this in troubleshooting, repairing, and on our final checkouts. It's amplified so that you can hear the audio from a receiver. And I have an amplifier back by the video, and I have a button on it, and I can give dial tone or take it away at any time. So what we want to do is we want to use the analyzer, and we want to ring the unit. But we want to also mention that these bells will pull a little more Rin out of the line than a normal telephone. So as long as your ring cycle voltage is up to standards, it should have no problem ringing the bells. Now first we'll go ahead and crank the unit and ring the bells. Now we can use the analyzer and send a ring cycle. We'll let that go a few times, then we'll give you some dial tone. I'll let it go one more time and we'll give you some dial tone. we want to use our keypad and dial out. So what we'll do is, if you watch the analyzer, you'll watch the numbers roll by. I'm going to end in a 2. Now, we've already used this telephone, so we know it transmits. Okay, we're back now. We had to take a short break. I had to wait on a few customers. And we also want to mention that our receiver hanger for our hook switch had to be repaired. The rivet was loose, that had to be repaired, and the hanger itself had to be readjusted so that our receiver capsule would fit into the hanger and not fall through. Our hinges were also worked on, and in the video earlier you may have noticed that where the hinges go, we had to stabilize. There was a crack at each one of them. That all had to be stabilized, and we had to use the right screws on the hinges because somebody had installed some screws that were too small. So that all had to be repaired. I also want to mention the large gear on the magneto. You want to hold this large gear when you're installing the crank handle. You want to make sure that that goes on straight and that it's not crooked. And also, when you remove the crank handle, you want to hold the magneto gear, and that way it won't turn while you're trying to put the crank handle on or take it off. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and push this button on our switch box. That gives us a line out and totally takes the analyzer out of the situation, and we can call a time and temp number. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and give you some dial tone. And we'll go ahead and call that number.
Good evening. Today is Tuesday, June 28th. The time is 7:53. Current temperature 82 degrees. Now the weather forecast for the Belleville area.
Mostly sunny today with highs in the upper 80s, mostly clear this evening, lows around 60. Mostly sunny Wednesday, highs in the lower 80s.
We can go ahead and hang up. We'll give you some dial tone. And we'll call my number and it'll be busy. Go ahead and hang our receiver up. Now that we know that this really cool wooden wall crank telephone has been repaired and converted, we can return it to Don and he can enjoy this telephone. I'm sure it's going to look great no matter where he installs it. This is Dennis with A1 Telephone Service and Repair, A1 Electronics. You can reach us on the web at www.a1-telephone.com, and you can also reach us at 618-235-6959. Thank you for watching and have a great day.